you so much for coming to the Artist Talk and the closing of Dance Till Your Bones Clatter, solo show by Will Kaplan. Give it up for Will. Yes.
Thank you.
This was an amazing show. I'm Kate Reed. I work at Tempest Gallery as the program director. Will, is there anything you want to say off the top?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. Immense thanks to Tempest, Daphne, and Chris have really been the dream team. I felt incredibly taken care of throughout this whole process. Just deep, immense gratitude for what you guys do in this space. This is such an act of love and generosity, and I'm very humbled to get to have been a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you all for being here to join us. This has been such a thrill. Will, I really wanted to start with the image of the studio, because there was obviously like a transition between maybe like the studio you started with and where we are today. So could you just describe what your first studio was like and maybe what happened in the last month or so?
Yeah, gladly. Just out the way, about 2 months ago, I had to vacate my studio. There was a fire in one of the upper floors, nobody hurt, very little of anybody's artwork damaged. So all in all, got off pretty lucky, but sucked to have to leave a spot that I had been for 7 years.
But what was it like? What was what was the environment?
The building. So it's still standing in Long Island City, right at the foot of the Pulaski Bridge, and a 2-story, probably former industrial. I don't really know what it was made or used for, but I think sometime in the 80s, a pair of families bought the building, lived in the upstairs units. One of the members is an artist, used the back alley as a sculpture yard, and arranged with sort of a subtenant to lease one wing of the building out to artists. So when I started, in 2019, when I was venturing from paper collage into found object, my partner, Jessa, now my wife, had the great idea that it was maybe time for me to actually get a real studio and not use our bedroom. So after, a remarkably short amount of time keeping my ears open, I found this listing on a Facebook group. I think it was the first spot I checked out in person. A remarkably good deal. And just everything about it felt right. Just sort of locked it down as soon as I could. It was just sort of about 140 square feet piece of space, sort of shared with a few other artists, jankily subdivided, stamped tin ceilings.
But it also sounded what was remarkable about it was just how much ephemera you had collected. And how much was kind of steeped in what sounded to me like a kind of history of materials and things that you had, is scavenged the right word?
That's exactly what I would say.
From the street.
Exactly.
And so it sounds like there was, what were you able to accomplish kind of in that space?
I think I felt a lot freer to just amass more stuff and just keep a mess ready for myself. It felt like as soon as I sort of had a freer space to deposit things, I was finding more and more cool things. If it was pieces of ornate furniture, or I think one of the tenants of the building just left out a pile of DIY home and energy books, manuals about solar power and eco-efficient building and stuff, which that was a gold mine, and it feels
and made its way into so many of these works.
Exactly. So it just sort of felt it became
almost like the environment from which these works emerge.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's sort of, you know, I think of the work as like kind of pulling from the outside world and sort of world building from there. The studio kind of became that middle ground, or that like sort of consolidated
Alchemy.
swamp. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
Very, very cool. So then the fire happened, there was no injuries, and you were lucky enough to, all of your work was intact, and you brought it to Nine's new space. So what was that like?
Yeah, yeah.
And for the record, Nine is a curatorial group run by Will and a few other of our buddies in the community.
Yeah, yeah, it's sort of a collective space where, you know, different curators and partner projects take a turn on a space that we all pay rent for. And my friend Jordan Siegel, great artist, great curator, a week before the fire, he brought me into this new space that they had just signed on, unused. It's in Chinatown, sort of a partial basement, so still like a great sort of window looking down into the space. And being in the room with him there, I was like, I'm in. Yeah, I'll be a dues-paying member, you know, to be able to make some shows happen here. This sounds great. A week later, this fire happens. My first concern is, what is the fate of this Tempest show? That, you know, I've been working on these pieces for about 2 years. So, you know, my heart was very much in my mouth when we were finally admitted back into the smoky building. All of it was fine miraculously, but with everybody's clearance, I bundled up these 5 pieces and got an Uber XL and just deposited them at 9 in this sort of half basement in Chinatown.
The art handler, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. I was well
Traverse of
prepared.
choice. Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, good.
And yeah, and you know, we only now just opened up our first show, so I had you know, the month that I needed to be in and out of there using it as a studio, which was actually pretty cool. Like.
Was there anything specific about Chinatown in particular? Because your work is so engaged with the environment, and you were kind of changing the environment in which the works were emerging a bit.
Yeah. I think downtown feels like sort of the heart of an art scene right now. So it felt like I was very close to the pulse, very sort of at the source of a lot of energy. This freestanding piece towards the front of the room is very much about the city for me. So it felt cool that that got to be visible from the street, and that I got to work on it with the door just a little bit open late into the night. Just feeling like, yeah, like I'm tapping into something here. And I think then also like being close to like what feels like the center of things, I got to feel cool and like
Got to feel
cool. Okay, and like this piece behind us, like, you know, I'm trying to channel like some kind of sense of like diva-ness or something. Is this? So I felt like, yeah, like I got to let these pieces live into that, being right there in Chinatown.
Very cool. So obviously, we talked a little bit about some of the, and please don't take offense. Is it detritus? Like, is it
trash? Yeah, garbage.
You know, found material. Found material. There's so much found material. There's so much found objects. I'm just curious, what attracts you to this in particular? Given, I mean, you could use anything.
Yeah. I think there's a sense of immediacy in using pre-existent and readily available material. I think like the blank page, the blank canvas is, it's like a very loaded and at times daunting surface to work on or proposition. I grew up in a house with a lot of magazines, the art programs that I was lucky enough to grow up with. Their collage was, kind of standard, run-of-the-mill, like cut and paste kids. So
it's almost like indexically linked to like growing up in the 90s or in like a certain era, because like I can't imagine anyone today is growing up among visual ephemera that's as omnipresent. So
yeah, no, you're probably right about that. I like to think that, at least in like anywhere since the 50s, the 70s, like there's no shortage of paper material floating around stuff. I mean, in the city, certainly there's like sort of always something being sort of thrust at you, put into your hands. But I think once you start looking, it's also hard to escape, where it's like, centers of public transit, there's always, the tourism brochures and stuff. And there's always stuff, on people's stoops and sidewalks. So it just feels like it's so abundant, and feels like a very welcoming place to jump off from. And that sort of extends to the use of found objects, or the use of found material as like the surface itself, or as like the canvas, that a found cabinet, or in these instances a found mirror feels like the specificity of what we found, or what I'm like holding, like creates a reaction or sparks like an association. So it's much easier to follow something than to try and have to like come up with the idea.
Yes. Oh, so it sounds like you're in reaction to the material culture, but also like the history.
Yes.
And one's own personal association, like a cultural association. It's really interesting because it kind of it sounds like it locks you into a certain time period or a history. And so I'm just wondering, and we can talk through different works, but I was thinking about this one in particular, where you seem to be writing between a tension of like a beauty and a romance, the images as well as the political histories embedded within them. I'm just wondering, how do you navigate the tension between like an attraction to the images, but also an implicit critique of what you're using and contextualizing?
Yes.
Yes. Well, do you want to talk more about this piece in particular?
Gladly.
Can someone close it, please, just so we can see it in its initial form? Thank you.
It may clatter a little. It's supposed to do that. No worries. It's built to be swung. But yeah, I mean, to just take you through it, the starting piece was this sort of porthole window frame that I had found 3-4 years ago, and the kind of a marine feel to it was, very instantaneous and exciting. Feels like, oh yeah, like who doesn't love some seafaring adventure type imagery? I love my work to be fun and playful, and I also never want to shy away from far off implications or darker subtexts. So seafaring exploration historically can't be separated from colonialism, from empire. So that felt like that, okay, like if I'm going to make a nautical piece, I need to plumb the depths of all the excitement, but also some of the darker motives that come with that type of imagery.
I think that you do well to ride the line, because the playfulness in a way, it kind of underscores the romantic element while still being like, there's a little bit of like absurdity and strangeness, and isn't it odd that as you kind of like engage with it? Right,
exactly. And like, I think there is, I don't know, I'm a believer in the inherently political, and I think using found materials feels like a way to just step into that as a starting point. So feels like, whatever, economic system that produced these images and got them into my hands, will be examined or examinable through the work.
It's interesting too, because you're implicitly like cutting things up, decontextualizing them, recontextualizing them. So you're disrupting like the initial narrative and then reanimating them in a new body. Like, is there something specific about the integration of odd images? Like, what does that, is that something that you find energizing in your work?
Deeply, yeah. I think, the one thing next to another is always going to, especially if there are different types of imagery, a drawing next to a photograph, or things that sort of don't belong together. That's always going to have like an electricity to it. So from there, I feel like it's really just a lot of like fine tuning and just like figuring out exactly what juxtaposition or what types of imagery or mark making really sort of give that moment that I want. It's hard to get into finer words than that, but like, it's just like a very, it's a level of hyperspecificity and reaction, or just like feeling that I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I'd love to also talk about is this tension between sculpture and painting, because the images lend themselves to the language of narrative and painting and world building, but they exist as objects that could be interpreted as a book, as you've talked about. And we can talk about perhaps bookmaking separately, but I'm curious if we could dive into or revisit a thread that we started in our initial conversations, because I just thought it was so well put.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to frame about like, you go ahead.
When we were talking about sort of image versus object, something I kind of was able to bluntly get at was like, in my head, like painting or pictures, like fiction, like objects, sculptures, nonfiction. It's like, that's a very kind of like blunt, elementary way of thinking about it, but I think something about flat images and like especially representational or figurative pictures themselves, like they ask us to see or to like look at something in a really specific way that I mean, it's hard to know if that's intuitive. I think like, we are surrounded by flat imagery all the time. So like, I think at this point it is intuitive, but I don't think that it was always the case to see a picture and necessarily know how to relate to or read to it. Talks about figurative painting within the Renaissance and like the weightedness of realism and
illusionism.
Yeah, exactly. Whether that was like apocryphal or not, I think does get at some of the strangeness or just like hyperspecificity of what it is to look at something flat and sort of understand it as depicting something real and having real illusionistic space. That it, some of the older theories that, painting as a window, a world you can step into.
Which in some ways I feel like it's like you're creating visual worlds, but visual worlds layered upon worlds existing on a three-dimensional space that you could turn over.
Right, exactly. So I think, the idea in older, less interactive work, I've been toying around with making sort of flat work on angled surfaces or having flat pictures with objects sort of popping out of them in a way to sort of play with that sense of like fictionality and like recessive or enterable space and things that actually come out or like come out at the viewer, like leap off the page in a sense. So I think like to now have like openable panels, images that we actually interact with, feels like a way of playing with that on a different level, or just like having us toy with that weird distinction.
Yeah, you're definitely fucking with it.
Good, yes. Lovely.
I love it. And also these, in the back you have these collages, and I thought that was a really good example of like, even in the domain where you could theoretically be working on a purely two-dimensional surface, you laminated them so you could flip them over.
Right.
So like they continue to be three-dimensional. Like they continue to have like a back and a front, or like an underbelly. Or a strangeness in that way, which is really beautiful. Okay, so let's talk about books, because you had mentioned that, you know, going back to college, your senior thesis, you're working in bookmaking, but you're also a writer. So I'm just, and this piece in the center in particular, these ones that open, they have that familiar experience of opening and closing, and obviously they contain words unto themselves. So I don't know if you could just talk to us about bookmaking and writing.
English major, art minor. My final project was a series of artist books where it felt like there was a very easy way to sort of play with both imagery and text. And yeah, since then, artist books have been a very fun and like useful form for me to play with. Again, like talking about flat image versus sculptural object, books feel like a really intuitive space where that kind of comes to life, and then there's this deep sort of interpersonal interaction that you have when flipping through a book. So I'd say, yeah, like that's definitely where some of this direction grew out of. For a while I was using, like in a few artist books, I was using some heavy bleed markers. So there would be this like almost stained glass effect where you know, you could see the bleed through on the other side of the page, and sometimes that would even like, you know, the marks would bleed through onto the following page, so you could see those on the other side. So it felt like there was this kind of tunneling effect that felt like an exciting possibility within the space of books. I don't know, I feel like there's any number of like fantasy books that I grew up with where like, you know, a kid could jump into the page or something could come out of the book. That feels like this was, you know, this series was a chance to sort of take to the next level and really bring into like the sculptural realm and have some of the, just like the musculature of using wood and joinery and things like that.
Yeah, and it sounds like your day job lent itself to that experience. Like, how would you say that it kind of trained you into a certain approach to craft?
Yes, yeah. My day job is in the crate shop for an art handling company, so I'm just building wooden boxes all day. And during the after hours and pulling strictly from the scrap pile, or on camera here, so on the record. After I've punched out, I've been able to put some of that pretty base level building skill to use in framing out these pieces. This would have been far beyond my capabilities. I mean, even when I started the job, and I've been there 6 years now, so I think like, you know, I'm not a naturally neat or particularly organized or like fastidious person. I appreciate that in work and aspire to it in my own. It doesn't come naturally to me, so I think, you know, doing something where I need to measure to the like 16th or the 8th of an inch for about 40 hours a week has like let me do this. Yeah, I think, this stuff has been in development for a long time, so it's been nice to have the space and now also the patience, like the time and the patience to just like get it right and like to like let it be about as functional and interactive as I want it to be.
Amazing. Yeah, and that it totally translates. I'd also love to hear more about kind of the conceptual process. How do you go, you've described this as a kind of like mood boarding, you're surrounded by images and you're reacting to them, but how does one of these works kind of come to life?
Yeah, similar to how I described with like this piece, there's a kind of foundational element that I'm beginning with. This piece to my left in the back was the first one I began for the series, and it began with the first mirror that's against the wall, the one with the white frame, and the dark wood frame in front of it, which just off the bat gave me a kind of like familial or homey or domestic feeling.
Yeah, say more about that. Like, what was you were trying to examine like your relationship to home, or the symbol of home, or the combination of like what was kind of getting explored?
I mean, I think that's sort of what I went through in the piece where, I think in just building it out, I wanted to describe a sense of rootedness, or presence, or like even like coziness, and a sense of familiarity, and like, the privilege of getting to experience, seasons from a single place, and like a place to sort of measure change. It's like sort of the stasis point, or like the foundation point. So that's some of the imagery or some of the effects that I was trying to manifest in the selection of imagery, or the level of or the paintings or clippings that I was trying to gather or amass around the piece.
Yeah, in this piece in particular, I love the images of like the children around the television set. There's something like so very nostalgic about that. You can, yeah, sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, just so folks can see. And then, because it's almost like telling a story, obviously within the realm of the work itself. And then the other thing that I love so much about this piece is, if you close it, sorry, we need audience participation. All right, great. On the front, there's this piece of wood, and then the drawing of the axe that's trying to cut it, but it has this kind of hilarious not functionality. So anyways, two little notes there of pieces that I love. So the one thing that we haven't talked about yet is the underlying material of mirrors. And what I find to be so like disorienting and also like deeply enchanting and beautiful is just how alluring it is to see people through it, see oneself into it. I feel like as viewers, we are certainly becoming in the work. We're becoming we're one of the images that are co-present with the other things that you've drawn and collaged. And I'm just wondering, what is some of the metaphorical material going into that, or like what draws you to this as a source material?
I'm not totally sure. I mean, I think similar to any found material I use, I know somebody will approach what I'm using with their own context. Like they'll have their own meaning and read with a piece of found imagery. And mirror is kind of no exception. I mean, in some ways, kind of the ultimate manifestation of that, where like, we can't come to a mirror with any kind of neutrality. And I feel like there's a lot of just inherent symbolism to them as objects. But yeah, I think
that's so interesting. With the mirror being something as a being aware of one's ability to, one's lens through which to see an image and then receive it?
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think, I think I've only been able to get here through get to a certain articulation of this, like, through the end of the show, like, now that it's been, here and I've been seeing people interact with it for a month, that, like, I think there's something, I think having people see themselves in the work and sort of the impossibility of seeing the work without seeing yourself has this kind of, like, phenomenological undercurrent where, like, we can't see anything without it affecting us, or, like, without maybe I'll cut myself off there.
No, I feel like you're about to say. I feel like you're about to say. I feel like
please.
you're saying, there's a certain level of subjectivity that's, like, inherent in a reading of a work, and you're just elevating that.
Exactly, and in some ways, I think, like, we can't observe anything without putting a piece of ourselves or projecting a piece of ourselves out there with it. Like, I think just to look at something or to engage with the outside world is to put ourselves into it in some ways. So I feel like these mirrored pieces feel like they kind of then get to act as, like, containers for that experience, or, like, frames for that.
And to insert yourself into the narrative and, like, into the history and into the...
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, that's, I think, what we want from a work of art to begin with, or just what we want from experience at all, is for it to, like, fit into a sense of narrative for ourselves. So this feels like a way to, in some ways, just literalize it.
Cool. Okay, so the title of this show is called Dance Until Your Bones Clatter, which has a joyous, it's similar to so much of the imagery in this work. It's joyous, it's also grave, and it's a line borrowed from Gabriele Calvacaresi's poem, At Last the New Arriving. And I know you have a personal connection to this poet, but I'm just wondering, like, what drew you to that line, and how did you know it belonged in this body of work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, 6 months, some amount of time ago, Daphne suggested this as the title, and that it was a line from Gabriele Calvacaresi. As it turns out, I've met this poet. They're the older sibling of one of my great friends from college, 𝘾𝙖 Calvacaresi, who's themselves a wonderful poet, musician, creative. So, that synchronicity felt like, oh, okay, we're on the right track here. Like, this is, like, we're onto something. I had sort of been picturing a pretty simple, straightforward title, like Open Mirror or something like that. But, I think I had a hard, like, I wanted to sort of keep the, sort of stay looking, see if there was any other lines from Gabriele that might be a little more on the nose and maybe just talk about the mirror a little more inherently. And in fact, like, I came across multiple lines from their poems that talk about, like, the eye reflecting the mirror, I am a mirror into a mirror. Like, I felt like, oh dang, like it's so meant to be. But trying out those other lines versus Dance Until Your Bones Clatter, and that these are kind of dancing partners, and that they do make noise when we open and swing them, and that they have pieces that knock against each other. I just kind of was like, like, Daphne was right. Like, like, I think that's what it is. I think that's just what it needs to be. And, by the time we were getting ready to install the show, that I was doing finishing touches between having to vacate my studio, I think being in the midst of, the heat of the summer, and just, like, whatever other chaos is going on and everybody else is in my own life, it felt like the desperation, but also, like, some of the ecstasy of that poem. There is a sort of, like, like burning joy to the poem, but it is there's a desperation to it too, and a deep yearning for some of the safety or some of the joy that they're trying to articulate. That felt like that was some of the energy I was coming into this show with, and like even just down to getting the work packed up and delivered. I felt some of that kind of like some of that manic intensity and stress. Thankfully, once we unloaded the stuff into the gallery, I felt greatly relieved of that, and it felt like the hard stuff was behind me once we actually got the stuff in here.
That sounds right. So I'm going to ask Will one more question, and I ask the audience if anyone can just start, mulling over a question that they may have for Will. Well, we're going to ask questions of the audience. So, Will, I wanted to ask, in the process of having the show open, is there anything that you feel like changed over the course of the show? You showing it to others, seeing people interact with the work, did the meaning essentially evolve in any way?
Yes, I'm not totally sure like how or what specifically feels different. The experience of the opening or just having other like multiple people in here looking at the works has been inherently rewarding. It's been very, very heartening to see people with the work. But I think there's been a level of like actualization for the series when I get to see somebody looking at a different work within the work, where there's this kind of like bouncing across and this, this sort of like circular looking,
They're like in an orchestral conversation.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
Each other.
And like there's these sort of sneaky scenes that you get to watch play out from behind you when we're looking at the work. That's like it's fun, and it makes me feel successful in what I'm going for. Even if I didn't totally have that specific interaction in mind, it feels like, oh no, perfect. Like this was supposed to happen.
And us being in the gallery must activate the work because we're again like changing them.
Exactly. Exactly. It feels phenomenological in that way.
Cool.
I don't know. There's just been like a lot of like small synchronicities that have come up. Somebody pulled out one of the laminated collages and told me like a student of mine used this exact cutout in a craft project we were doing yesterday.
That's so uncanny.
Yeah, small
That's
moments
so
like
uncanny.
that just feel like, okay, like
what's happening?
This stuff is supposed to be happening, and I couldn't have known any of this. It's like we're sort of all where we're supposed to be. Okay, cool.
Cool. The universe is clued in.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a question for Will? Okay, do you have another one? Look at that.
Tempest prepared as always.
Hello. You kind of addressed it a little bit, but I just wanted to ask more like directly the interactivity of everything. Like they're sculptures, but they're also, you called them like dancing partners, and the subjectivity of like seeing yourself in it. I just wanted to ask, has that always been part of your approach to your work, or where does that come from?
I think it's always been a hope. It feels like this level of touching and interaction. In some ways, like that's what we want from the paintings that we can't touch. I'm fine by just kind of lowering the bar and just letting people touch the thing. Again, the artist books feel like, a starting point where, I do want people to be able to have that close read and that, sensation of touch with the artworks. That feels, like what I want from work and what I want artwork to be able to do and how I want people to be able to be with an object. A friend of mine said that opening these things up and interacting with them reminded him of like flipping through things at a record shop, which like felt like, oh, that's so perfect, and like nothing I could have thought of on my own, even though that's, you know, a pastime of mine too. And it just felt like, yeah, like that's what I want from my work.
Very cool. Awesome. Does anyone else have a question?
Hi, thank you so much. I was wondering, besides your day job, where else you source the sort of like folio almost materials, and what the process is like of, I mean, I know there's lots of stuff that's on the stoops of New York all the time, so like what catches your eye, I guess, when you're in that process?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much all found. You know, there were some pieces of plexiglass at work that I was able to, you know, frame out and customize for some specific pieces. But yeah, there are also just, you know, some found frames here too. So yeah, I think getting into, or just using the found, has always just been fun for me, and I think it's just like, it's a fun way to go about the city. You know, a friend who also uses found stuff jokes like that were like the Terminator, and we're always like scanning, and like, you know, there's, you know, I'm always gonna kind of slow down next to a trash pile. And yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a lot of just kind of weird and enchanting interactions that, or just, you know, seeds of artworks that have come out of just picking something up.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
My question's closed.
Wait.
But you'll have
For
to
the video.
ask it into the microphone.
I'm just curious, how do you know when a work is done? Because there are obviously so many, I'm assuming it's a non-linear process where you're kind of, so I'm curious how you make that decision, how intuitive is it, like?
Yeah. Deadlines help. I mean, I need to be cut off at a certain point, but it's like, I think a piece will start to look like itself very quickly, and some of the bigger strokes or, you know, moves will happen first, and I usually, you know, block them in with like painter's tape and hold them in place, and then it feels like, you know, the rest of the time spent is fine-tuning and just sort of calculating exactly what I want where. And I mean, I try and just base it on compositional concerns first and foremost. You know, the thematic, I think, dictates what images or like what, you know, books or magazines that I'm pulling out, what types of imagery I'm looking for. But you know, from there, it's really just about the size, the shape, the color, the texture. It feels like, you know, I'm just sort of waiting for when the eye has sort of like reached that perfect balance, or it can stay in motion.
Thank
you. Yeah.
Very cool. Oh, sorry. Oh.
Somebody.
Oh, sorry,
Thanks. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about this 3D piece. I'm noticing the height and the way in which you've like decided and placed, you know. So this is a familiar found like stool piece, and then this is Will's surface. And have you done? Are there more of these 3D, or is this a new one? And honestly, I just love the range of like large piece of found object, and then tiny details of when you decide to use a screw and when you decide to use like a little finishing nail. And so I don't know what the title of this is, but I wonder if you could talk about this piece. Also the height of the imagery that's different from heights on
all of them, yes. Thank you. This is, I'd say, my most sculptural work to date. I think usually I'm thinking of my stuff as wall sculpture or an artist book. So there's always a relationship to flatness. But yeah, I think I'd had the idea of using like a swivel chair base or, something as the base of a sculpture for a minute. And that's actually how I started this piece, was on on a swivel chair stool. Even though I knew there's probably a chrome flat base stool somewhere on the streets waiting for me, which rest assured I found.
Wait, really?
Yeah, exactly. The city is that, the city comes through for you like that. It really does. I knew, I think this was I think these two were the last pieces I started. And I wanted to give myself one with a lot of surfaces to play with and just be a little more all out and a little less constrained on. So I think I started with the sort of central axis and leaves coming off of it, and felt maybe it needs to be turnable. That's when I realized maybe I can use a swivel chair like I've been thinking of. I love Art Deco architecture, and I like Joseph Cornell, and I spy books. So it sort of felt like a tribute to some of that, or just a way of manifesting some of those influences. The blocking it up by a few levels, it just made sense to have it a little more torso or waist height. Originally I wasn't using any of those blocks, and it was the perfect height for me to work on from my own swivel chair. But then, when showing people or standing around it, you're kind of hunching over it. And I still wanted to kind of give people a sort of bird's eye view over the tops of the surfaces, over the tops of the frames. So I felt no, it doesn't, I don't want the panels to be at eye level. I want them just to just be reaching your chest, or just to be able to sort of peer over through, or look down through.
Have you ever lowered it?
Yeah. This is its max height, and we're figuring out I had brought more blocks to see how taller do we want to get this thing.
I meant from the chair's mechanism itself.
Right.
Okay.
I haven't lowered it in here. I did back at the studio, again, just for ease of working. But yeah, this height, raising the stool wasn't gonna get us there quite. So
Gotcha.
we had to kind
I'm
of
just
stagger it up a little.
I'm just realizing it's an underutilized interactive element.
Yeah, you can spin the whole thing around or lower it. It's a little harder to heighten it again, but
yeah, we won't get there. But anyway.
I think you were sort of just touching on this, but my question is how much you consider the body and the figure when you're composing the works. Because of the material, the source material being mirror heavy, I just wonder, I think when I look at the work, I think about attraction, because we're attracted to ourselves, but then I think about the distraction of the work, and then we become a distraction because we want to look at the work and see what you were doing in composing, and how the collages, are they meant to interact with me? Right? I just wondered if you could speak on that.
I mean, at a fundamental level, or something I kind of rest on in my artist statement, is that my work is about people interacting with their environment, which is a very broad catch-all kind of phrase in some ways. Then sort of the incorporation of the body. The experience of working on these was often weird. I think we lock in at the studio to, in some ways, get away from ourselves and to have to see myself in the mirror when working was like a great motivation to like get things down, and you know, like it gave me that space I needed, and you know, it's definitely still a lot of late night kind of jump scares, or just like, oh, like I need a haircut, or like I need to get some sleep, yeah, I like, in some ways I think that the layers of collage, you know, afford some of that masking or some of that distance, but that there is still that level of implication that happens when we see the work, that we cannot unsee ourselves in it either.
Awesome, thank you. Does anyone else have a last question?
Hi. I was wondering if any of the works have like marks that were like, I'm assuming like made by somebody else or painted on or written on, and like as far as like your process, or like if you have any rules or like decision making on what you would cover up or not cover up, and how you interact with already pre-made marks.
Yeah. The mirror that folds down in this piece, has, I mean, you can't quite see it, but was like a decorated mirror that I felt like, this is lovely. You know, just feels like another piece of collage at a certain point. You know, some of the mirrors, some of the plexi is a little scratched up. It's all found. So I sort of felt like, all right, like, you know, I can ignore it as much as I need to. You know, the crack in the mirror on at the back of this piece was, I'd say, intentionalized. I did do it myself, but I think, you know, I sort of going back to the found, or perhaps the accident, I feel like there's just a level of responsiveness or I don't know about fatedness, but just like sees it like sort of allowing for opportunity or chance, that I definitely welcome into the work. That said, I feel like once this was installed, a lot of the work was just like polishing the pieces and like getting a lot of like dust and like, you know, specks and just like stuff that had been masked to the surface off of them. So, you know, I think there was a level of sort of what happens to the work that I do want to account for and nullify.
Awesome. So thank you all for joining us. This is the end of the talk. If you want to, we have wine and cookies in the back, and please stick around and interact with all the work. Thank you. Great job, Mel.
Thank you, Kate.
Yes.
Appreciate this.
Nourishing.